My wife slept with my brother, and my parents took their side. So I quietly collected 40 hours of video, and that's when their lives fell apart. I, 35, male, had been with my wife Sarah, 33, female, for 9 years, married for 6, no kids, thank God. We met through mutual friends at a party, hit it off immediately, and I genuinely thought I'd found my person. She was smart, funny, ambitious, and we just clicked. She worked in marketing for a tech startup, made decent money, and we had what I thought was a solid partnership. My brother Kyle is 31. Growing up, we were close. Not best friends or anything, but we got along well enough. He's always been the charming one in the family, the guy who could talk his way into or out of anything. Works in sales, drives a flashy car he can barely afford, always chasing the next big commission. Our parents absolutely adore him. He's the golden child who can do no wrong. I've always been the boring, stable one. Our parents, Richard and Linda, are both retired teachers. Traditional values, big on family unity, the whole blood is thicker than water mentality. They live about 20 minutes from Sarah and me, and we did family dinners every couple of weeks. Kyle would show up when he felt like it, which was maybe half the time. When he did show up, it was always a production. Stories about his latest sales conquest, jokes that had everyone laughing, charm dialed up to 11. Looking back now, I can see how Sarah looked at him during those dinners. The way her eyes would light up when he walked in. The way she'd laugh just a little too hard at his jokes. The way she'd find excuses to sit next to him. At the time, I thought she was just being friendly, being a good sister-in-law. Shows what I knew. Everything started falling apart 6 months ago. Sarah had been acting different for about 3 months before that, working late more often, being secretive with her phone, less interested in spending time together. Classic signs, right? But I trusted her. I'm the idiot who actually believed her when she said she was stressed about a big project at work. She'd come home at 9 or 10 p.m., claim she'd been in meetings, then immediately jump in the shower every single time. At first I thought she was just a germaphobe about the subway. Then I noticed she'd started buying new lingerie, expensive stuff from boutiques downtown. When I'd try to initiate intimacy, she'd claim she was too tired, but she wasn't too tired to text someone until 2 a.m. while I was trying to sleep. The night I found out was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd left work early for a dentist appointment that got canceled last minute. Decided to surprise Sarah by coming home early and maybe ordering her favorite Thai food for dinner. I'm such a romantic, right? I walked into our house around 3 p.m. and heard noises upstairs. My first thought was that we were being robbed. Adrenaline kicks in. I'm ready to call 911 when I hear Sarah's laugh, that specific laugh she does when she's really happy. My stomach drops because I know that laugh, and I know those sounds. I should have left. Should have walked right back out that door, but I didn't. I went upstairs like an idiot, opened our bedroom door, and there they were, my wife and my brother in my bed. In the bed I'd been sleeping in for 4 years. The bed we'd picked out together at IKEA, arguing about whether to get the firm or medium firm mattress. The bed where I'd proposed to her. The look on their faces was almost comical. Sarah screamed, scrambled for the sheets. Kyle just froze like a deer in headlights. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, just stood there for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. "Get out," I said. Simple as that. My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. Kyle grabbed his clothes and bolted. Literally ran out of the house in his boxers holding his pants. Sarah started crying, tried to explain, but I held up my hand. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Be gone when I get back tomorrow." I left, drove to the nearest hotel, checked in, and sat in the room staring at the wall until morning. I didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat there completely numb, trying to process what the hell had just happened. Ordered room service around midnight, couldn't eat it. Turned on the TV, couldn't focus on anything. Just replayed that scene over and over in my head. The next day I came home to find Sarah still there. She'd been up all night, she said. Wanted to talk, needed to explain. Her eyes were red and puffy, makeup smeared down her cheeks. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 6 years of marriage, that instinct doesn't just disappear. But I kept my distance. I told her there was nothing to explain. I saw what I saw. That's when she dropped the first bomb. "It's not what you think," she said, which is possibly the dumbest thing someone can say when caught cheating. Kyle and we've been in love for over a year. We tried to stop, but we couldn't help ourselves. A year. They'd been doing this for a year, under my nose at family dinners, probably while I was at work, in my house, on my furniture. Every time Kyle came over for barbecues, Every time we went to my parents' house for holidays, every business trip Sarah took, every late night at the office. I want a divorce, I said. No, she replied. Just like that. No, you don't get to just throw away our marriage because you're being emotional and irrational. I actually laughed. I'm being irrational? I caught you sleeping with my brother. You're not thinking clearly, she continued, like she was explaining something to a child. You're hurt, I understand that. But if you'd been meeting my needs emotionally, this wouldn't have happened. Kyle listens to me. Kyle makes me feel special. Kyle understands me in ways you never did. Kyle can have you, I interrupted. I'm done. Get a lawyer. That's when she got angry. Really angry. Started screaming about how I was a terrible husband, how I was never home, how I prioritized work over her, how I was emotionally unavailable. How I forgot her birthday last year. I didn't. I threw her a surprise party with 20 of her friends. How I never took her anywhere nice. We'd been to Paris 6 months ago. How I didn't support her career. I'd literally helped her prepare for the interview that got her the job she has now. All the greatest hits. I let her rant, then packed a bag and left again. Stayed with my friend Marcus that night. He's been divorced twice, so he knew the drill. Gave me whiskey, let me vent, told me to lawyer up immediately. I called my parents that night, figured they should know before Kyle spun some story. That conversation was enlightening. Now, son, my dad started. I know you're upset, but family is family. These things happen. Sarah's a good woman, and Kyle, well, you know how he is with the ladies. Maybe if I'd what, Dad? Been a better husband so my wife wouldn't screw my brother? Don't be crude, my mom chimed in. We raised you better than that. Sarah called us earlier. She's very upset. Said you kicked her out without even letting her explain properly. Said you were violent and threatening. I was what? I left the house. I didn't touch her. That's not what she said. She was very frightened. Said you threw things and yelled at her. Complete lies. But they believed her without even asking for my side. I didn't kick her out. I left so I wouldn't have to look at her. That's the same thing, Mom said. She has nowhere to go. Her family is across the country. We told her she could stay in Kyle's old room here until you two work this out. My parents were letting my cheating wife stay in their house while supporting her story that somehow this was my fault. There's nothing to work out, I said. I'm divorcing her. Don't be hasty, Dad warned. Marriages work. You don't just throw it away at the first sign of trouble. Your mother and I had our rough patches too, but we worked through them. Did Mom sleep with Uncle Bill? No. Then, it's not the same thing. That's enough, Mom snapped. We didn't raise you to be vindictive. Sarah made a mistake. People make mistakes. You need to be the bigger person here and forgive her. That's what marriage is about. First sign of trouble. A year-long affair with my brother is a mistake. I hung up, blocked their numbers, blocked Kyle's number, blocked Sarah's number. I was done with all of them. The next week was a blur. I found a lawyer, started the divorce paperwork, began separating our finances, and found out Sarah had been taking money from our joint account for months, about $15,000 total. When I confronted her about it through my lawyer, she claimed it was for household expenses that apparently included hotel rooms for her and Kyle. Turns out they had a favorite spot, the Riverside Hotel downtown, $300 a night. They'd been there at least a dozen times according to our credit card statements. My credit card, by the way. I'd been literally paying for my wife to cheat on me. My lawyer, Frank, was a grizzled old guy who'd seen everything. Kid, he said, document everything. Every text, every email, every bank statement. Trust me on this. So I did. I went through our bank statements with a fine-tooth comb. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, gifts I never received, jewelry purchases in February, nothing for me on Valentine's Day. But apparently Kyle got something nice. Plane tickets to Miami in March when she told me she was going to a marketing conference in Chicago. It painted a pretty clear picture. I changed all my passwords, moved my money to a new account, and basically separated my life from hers completely. Changed the Netflix password, the Hulu password, the Amazon password. Petty maybe, but watching her text me asking for the new passwords was oddly satisfying. I left her on read. Then 3 weeks after D-Day I got served with papers. But they weren't divorce papers. Oh no, Sarah was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress. According to her lawsuit, I had falsely accused her of infidelity, rich considering the evidence, kicked her out of her home without proper notice, turned her family against her, Ironic considering they live across the country and I haven't spoken to them. Publicly humiliated her by spreading lies about her character, caused her severe emotional trauma requiring therapy, destroyed her personal property, I had no idea what she was talking about, and threatened her safety by my violent behavior. She was seeking $150,000 in damages. I literally laughed out loud reading it. Frank did too when I showed him. "This is the dumbest thing I've seen in 30 years of practice," he said, adjusting his reading glasses. "She's represented by... Oh, this just gets better. She's represented by Kyle Mitchell, your brother." My brother was representing her. He'd passed the bar 2 years ago, but barely practiced, mostly did sales. Now he was playing lawyer for my cheating wife in a lawsuit against me. "Can he even do that?" I asked. "Technically, yes. Ethically questionable given his involvement, but technically permissible under state bar rules. He's going to get destroyed in court, though. This lawsuit is frivolous. No judge is going to take it seriously." Then Frank showed me the witness list. My parents, Richard and Linda, were listed as witnesses for Sarah. They were going to testify on her behalf that I was a neglectful husband who drove her into Kyle's arms. Also on the list, 3 of Sarah's coworkers who would testify to my controlling behavior, her therapist who would testify about the trauma I caused, her best friend Melissa who would testify that Sarah had confided in her about my emotional abuse for years. I should have been angry, should have been devastated. Instead, I felt this weird sense of calm wash over me. They were all so confident, so sure they could manipulate the system and the narrative, so sure I'd roll over or settle to avoid embarrassment, so sure they could gaslight me into thinking I was the bad guy here. They had no idea what was coming. "Frank," I said, "I want to countersue for adultery, fraud, theft of marital assets, and anything else you can think of, and I want to make damn sure this goes to trial." Frank grinned. "Now you're thinking like a winner. Let's bury them." See, here's the thing about being a software engineer. I'm good with technology, really good. And our house, I'd installed a comprehensive security system 2 years ago when we had a break-in scare in the neighborhood. Cameras in the living room, kitchen, front door, back door, and yes, even in the bedroom. Sarah knew about most of them. She'd insisted on the bedroom one for security after watching some true crime documentary. I'd forgotten about that camera until Frank asked if I had any proof of the affair beyond walking in on them. Then it all clicked. I went home, pulled up the cloud storage for our security system, and went back 3 months. There it was, multiple occasions, different angles, time-stamped, crystal clear 1080p video of my wife and brother doing exactly what I'd caught them doing. In my bed, on my couch, in my kitchen, against my dining room table, once in the shower, which was honestly impressive from a logistical standpoint but disgusting from every other standpoint. They'd been incredibly careless, never even glanced at the cameras, too caught up in their affair to remember they were being recorded. Every single time I made copies, encrypted backups, sent them to Frank through a secure file transfer. He nearly fell out of his chair. I can't, do you know what you have here?" Frank was practically gleeful. "This doesn't just prove your case. This destroys theirs. If they try to claim you're lying about the affair, we have video evidence. If they try to claim emotional distress, we can show she was the one causing it. If your parents try to paint you as the bad guy, we can show them exactly what they're defending." "I want to wait," I said. "Wait for what?" "Let them build their case. Let them get confident. Let them think they're winning. Let them commit to their story under oath. Then, we hit them with everything at once." Frank looked at me with newfound respect. "You're a cold son of a... I like it. You're going to make them bury themselves, then drop the evidence when they're fully committed to their lies. Beautiful. They wanted to play games. Fine. I'll play, but I play to win." Over the next 2 months, Sarah and Kyle prepared their case. Through the discovery process, I had to provide some documentation, but nothing that would tip my hand about the videos. I gave them bank statements, emails, text messages, enough to make them think they knew everything I had. Sarah submitted a detailed account of our marriage, painting me as a workaholic who ignored her needs, never showed her affection, and created a hostile living environment. She claimed I belittled her career, mocked her friends, and refused to go to couples counseling when she suggested it. We'd never discussed couples counseling, but okay. Kyle's legal work was amateur at best. He'd clearly watched too many legal dramas. His motions were filled with dramatic language, but light on actual legal merit. Lots of references to cruel and unusual behavior and psychological warfare. but very little actual legal precedent. Frank said it was like watching someone try to perform surgery after watching Grey's Anatomy. My parents submitted written statements about what a difficult son I was, how I'd always been cold and distant, and how Sarah had confided in them about my emotional abuse for years. They described incidents that never happened, times I supposedly yelled at Sarah in front of them, times I supposedly refused to let her visit them alone, times I supposedly monitored her phone. Reading those statements hurt more than finding Sarah in bed with Kyle. These were the people who raised me, who taught me right from wrong, who told me to always tell the truth. And here they were lying under penalty of perjury to support my cheating wife against their own son. But it also hardened my resolve. If they wanted to burn that bridge, I'd provide the gasoline. The depositions were fascinating. I watched all of them via video link since I had the right to be present. Sarah maintained her story. I was neglectful. She and Kyle developed feelings over time. They tried to resist but couldn't, and my violent reaction to finding them together had traumatized her. She cried on cue, dabbed at her eyes with tissues Kyle provided, spoke in a soft, wounded voice. When asked about the money from the joint account, she claimed it was for self-care because I wouldn't allow her to spend money on herself. She painted a picture of financial abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, everything short of physical abuse. When asked why she didn't just divorce me if I was so terrible, she said she still loved me and wanted to make it work, that she believed in her wedding vows and thought she could save our marriage through counseling and therapy. The irony of her talking about wedding vows while having a year-long affair with my brother was not lost on me. Kyle's deposition was even more entertaining. He claimed he'd been counseling Sarah about our marital problems at family dinners, that they developed deep feelings that were pure and real over the course of several months, that the physical relationship just happened naturally and they both felt terrible guilt about it. When asked if he thought sleeping with his brother's wife was appropriate, he said, "Love doesn't follow societal rules. When you connect with someone, on a soul level, you can't deny that connection." I nearly vomited. When asked if he discussed the affair with our parents, he admitted he had. Said they were understanding and supportive of his and Sarah's relationship. Said they believed Sarah and Kyle were better suited for each other than Sarah and I were. So my parents knew. They knew the whole time, and they still took Sarah's side. My deposition was straightforward. Yes, I worked a lot. I'm a software engineer, that's the job. Yes, our marriage had some issues. All marriages do. No, I never abused her in any way. No, I didn't kick her out. I left to avoid confrontation. Yes, I was divorcing her. No, I would not be reconciling under any circumstances. When Sarah's lawyer, Kyle, asked if I had any proof of the affair beyond walking in on them, I simply said, "Yes." "What proof?" "You'll find out at trial. Mr. Mitchell, you need to disclose all evidence during discovery." I disclosed that I have security camera footage from my home. Your client signed the installation agreement. It's all in the discovery documents you should have read. The look on Kyle's face was priceless. He knew he'd screwed up, but he didn't know how badly yet. He frantically flipped through papers, trying to find the mention of security cameras. Frank sat there with a slight smile, saying nothing. "I'll need copies of any footage you intend to use," Kyle stammered. "You'll get them according to the court's timeline," Frank said smoothly. "We're under no obligation to provide them before we're legally required to." Kyle knew he was in trouble, but he was pot committed at this point. They'd built their entire case around Sarah's version of events. Changing course now would be admitting everything was a lie. The trial was set for 6 months after I'd been served. Frank filed our countersuit 3 months in, claiming alienation of affection, still legal in a few states, including ours, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and emotional distress. We were asking for $300,000, double what Sarah wanted. 2 weeks before trial, Sarah's lawyer, Kyle the idiot, filed a motion for summary judgment, claiming they had such overwhelming evidence that we should settle for the full $150,000 plus legal fees. The motion included sworn affidavits from Sarah's co-workers, her therapist, her friend Melissa, and my parents, all testifying to my terrible behavior. Frank laughed, filed our opposition, and attached a single screenshot from one of the videos, fully clothed, but clearly showing Sarah and Kyle in an intimate embrace in our living room, timestamp visible. Along with the photo, Frank included a simple statement. The defendant has approximately 40 hours of video evidence that will demonstrate the plaintiff's testimony is wholly fabricated. 40 hours. That's how much footage there was. Every encounter they'd had in my house for 3 months, captured in crystal clear high definition. The motion for summary judgment was denied so fast it probably set a record. Within 2 hours of our filing, the judge's order came back, motion denied. Trial will proceed as scheduled. Both parties are advised to be prepared for a lengthy evidentiary hearing. Kyle tried to call me. I didn't answer. Sarah tried to email me. I deleted it. My parents left a voicemail saying we needed to talk this out like adults before going to trial. I blocked them again. 3 days before trial, Kyle filed an emergency motion to exclude the video evidence, claiming it violated Sarah's privacy. Frank had been expecting this. He responded with a signed installation agreement, the notice posted in our home about security cameras, and the fact that Sarah herself had insisted on the bedroom camera for security purposes. The motion was denied. They were trapped. Their entire case was built on lies, and I had proof. They could either proceed to trial and be destroyed, or drop the lawsuit. Pride and stupidity won out. They proceeded. The day of the trial arrived. Sarah showed up in a conservative dress, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, playing the victim role to perfection. She looked thin, like she'd lost weight, dark circles under her eyes, the image of a traumatized woman. Kyle was in an ill-fitting suit, looking nervous. He kept adjusting his tie and shuffling papers. My parents sat behind them, looking stern and disappointed at me, presumably. They'd aged since I last saw them. Dad's hair was grayer. Mom looked tired. I showed up with Frank, a laptop, and a thumb drive containing every piece of evidence we'd compiled. We looked calm, confident, and ready for war. I'd gotten a haircut the day before, wore my best suit, projected confidence. I wanted the judge to see the contrast. Sarah's case went first. She took the stand, tearfully recounting our marriage, how I worked 60 to 70-hour weeks, how I never took her out, how I criticized her spending, how I made her feel small and worthless, how finding emotional support with Kyle was the only thing that kept her going through her depression and anxiety that I refused to acknowledge. And then, she said, dabbing at her eyes with the tissue Kyle provided, he came home early one day. Kyle was there to talk about his relationship problems. His girlfriend had just broken up with him. We were just talking, sitting on the bed, fully clothed, and he burst in, assumed the worst, and started screaming at me. She took a shaky breath. He called me horrible names, a worthless whore. He told me I was disgusting, said he wished he'd never married me, said I'd ruined his life. He picked up a lamp and threw it against the wall. I've never been so scared in my life. I thought he was going to hurt me. It was a masterful performance. The judge, a woman in her 50s, looked sympathetic. The court reporter was even dabbing at her own eyes. Sarah's lawyer, Kyle, ate it up, asking leading questions that Frank should have objected to, but didn't. He was letting them dig themselves deeper. Sarah's co-workers testified about how I'd shown up at her office once, looking angry and controlling, never mind that I'd brought her lunch because she was working through her break. Her therapist testified about the severe anxiety and PTSD Sarah was experiencing from my psychological abuse, never mind that the therapist had never met me or heard my side. Melissa, her best friend, testified about how Sarah would call her crying after our fights, how I supposedly told Sarah she was lucky anyone would want her, how I controlled what she wore and who she saw. All lies, but compelling lies told by sympathetic witnesses. My parents were called next. Dad testified that I'd always been emotionally stunted and difficult to connect with, that Sarah had called them multiple times over the years crying because I'd said something hurtful or forgotten an important date. She tried so hard to make that marriage work, Dad said, but my son, he just doesn't know how to love someone properly, never has. Even as a boy, he was cold, distant. Mom testified that Sarah was like a daughter to them, and that she'd never seen Sarah happier than when she was spending time with Kyle at family gatherings. They just have this natural chemistry, Mom said, looking directly at me. Something I never saw between her and my son. Sometimes people just aren't meant to be together, and you can see it in how they interact. Sarah lights up around Kyle. She never did that with my son. The knife twisted deeper. My own mother testifying that my brother was a better match for my wife than I was, essentially saying that my wife cheating on me with my brother made sense because they were meant to be. Kyle tried to testify as a witness, but Frank objected on grounds of conflict of interest. The judge sustained it. Kyle couldn't be both the lawyer and a witness in his own case. That was his first major screw-up, and you could see the panic in his eyes as he realized it. After 2 days of testimony painting me as a monster, the kind of man who would emotionally torture his wife until she had no choice but to seek comfort elsewhere, it was our turn. Frank stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and said, Your Honor, we'll be brief. The defense calls the defendant to the stand. I took the stand, was sworn in, and Frank walked me through my version of events calmly, methodically, finding them in bed together, actually in bed, actually having sex, the money Sarah took, the lies she told, my attempts to handle things civilly by removing myself from the situation. Did you at any point call your wife names as she testified? Frank asked. No, I said. Get out to my brother and told my wife I was leaving. Did you throw a lamp or any other objects? No. I've never thrown anything in anger in my life. Did you restrict her spending or control her behavior in any way? No. We had a joint account and separate accounts. She could spend whatever she wanted from either. Ms. Martinez testified that you worked 60 to 70-hour weeks and were never home. Is that accurate? I work 40 to 45 hours a week, same as most people. I work from home 2 days a week. Sarah worked late far more often than I did. Do you have any evidence to support these claims? Frank asked. Yes, I said. I have video evidence. The courtroom went silent. Sarah went pale. Kyle shot up like he'd been electrocuted. Objection. This evidence wasn't properly disclosed during discovery. Frank smiled. It absolutely was, Your Honor. In our interrogatory responses, we stated that the defendant had security camera footage from his home. We specifically mentioned it in response to question 14 about evidence of the affair. The plaintiff's attorney failed to request the footage specifically, but we disclosed its existence as required by law. The judge looked at Kyle. Is this true, counselor? Kyle scrambled through his papers. You could see the moment he realized he'd missed it. His face went red, then white. I didn't think. The disclosure was vague and... The disclosure stated, and I quote, Frank said, reading from a document, that the defendant possesses security camera footage from the marital residence showing the plaintiff's extramarital affair. That seems quite clear to me. It's becoming increasingly apparent that you didn't do your due diligence, counselor, the judge said dryly. Objection overruled. Let's see this video evidence. Frank set up the laptop, connected it to the courtroom's display system, and pulled up the first video. The date stamp was clearly visible. December 14th, 2:34 p.m. Our bedroom. Sarah and Kyle, very much not just talking, very much not fully clothed. I watched my parents' faces as the video played. Mom covered her mouth, turned away. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. His face went red, then pale. Sarah was crying. Real tears this time, tears of humiliation and fear. Kyle looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The judge's expression hardened. I think we get the idea, counselor. How much of this do you have? Approximately 40 hours across 3 months, Your Honor. Multiple dates, multiple locations in the home, all clearly contradicting the plaintiff's testimony that she and Mr. Kyle Mitchell were not having a physical relationship. Frank played 3 more videos, different dates, different locations in the house, the living room on January 8th, the kitchen on January 22nd, the master bathroom on February 3rd, all crystal clear, all time-stamped, all completely destroying Sarah's entire story. Your Honor, Frank said, as you can see, the plaintiff's testimony about what the defendant found was inaccurate. These videos show a pattern of infidelity spanning several months. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a single moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing affair between the plaintiff and the defendant's own brother. Furthermore, Frank pulled up the bank statements on the screen. The plaintiff testified that she used marital funds for self-care because the defendant restricted her spending. These records show hotel charges, restaurant bills, and jewelry purchases, all made during times the defendant has proof he was at work. The jewelry purchased on February 14th was never given to the defendant. The defendant wasn't present for any of the hotel stays. He clicked to another screen. These are phone records showing thousands of texts and hundreds of calls between the plaintiff and Kyle Mitchell, including numerous communications during times the plaintiff claimed to be working late or at the gym. Finally, Frank said, regarding the lamp the plaintiff claims the defendant threw in anger, we have footage from that day as well. He played the video from the day I discovered them. There I was opening the bedroom door, standing still for several seconds, saying calmly, "Get out." Kyle running from the room. Me saying to Sarah, "I'm staying at a hotel tonight, be gone when I get back tomorrow." Then me leaving, no yelling, no names called, no lamp thrown, nothing but calm, controlled behavior from a man who'd just been betrayed in the worst possible way. The judge looked at Sarah with barely concealed disgust. "Counselor," she said to Kyle, "did you know about these videos before filing this lawsuit?" Kyle stammered. We. My client assured me that her version of events was accurate. I didn't think to request the security footage because I trusted her account as her attorney and someone who knows her personally. I believe your client lied to you, the judge said flatly. And you didn't do your due diligence to verify her claims. This is exactly why lawyers shouldn't represent people they're personally involved with. It clouds judgment and leads to situations like this. Do you have anything else to present, or can we move on to the countersuit? Kyle shook his head, looking defeated. No, Your Honor. Then I think we're done here with the plaintiff's case, the judge said. I'm dismissing the plaintiff's case with prejudice. As for the countersuit, we'll reconvene tomorrow morning for closing arguments, but I suspect I know which way this is going to go. We left for the day. Sarah was sobbing in the hallway. Kyle looked shell-shocked. My parents were in a corner arguing in hushed voices. I didn't even look at them as Frank and I walked past. That, Frank said once we were outside, is what total victory looks like. I've been practicing law for 33 years, and that's one of the most satisfying days I've ever had in court. The next day was short. Frank presented our case for damages, the therapy I'd needed, $15,000 so far, the cost of the divorce, $20,000 in legal fees, the marital funds Sarah had misappropriated, $15,000, the emotional distress of being betrayed by my wife, my brother, and my parents, hard to quantify, but we argued for $25,000. We weren't actually asking for the full $300,000. That was just to make a point. We were asking for $75,000, roughly what I'd lost in the divorce plus damages for the emotional harm. Kyle didn't even present a real defense. He knew it was over. He mumbled something about mitigating circumstances and emotional distress on both sides, but even he didn't sound convinced. The judge ruled in our favor. $75,000 plus Sarah had to pay both our legal fees and her own. With court costs and attorney fees, she was looking at over $100,000 in total debt. The judgment would be placed on her credit report. Wages would be garnished if she didn't pay. The judge also made a point of addressing my parents, who were sitting in shocked silence. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, she said, I want you to understand what happened here. Your son was wronged, deeply wronged by his wife and his brother. Instead of supporting him, you supported his abusers. You testified on behalf of someone who lied to you, manipulated you, and used you to hurt your own son. You came into my courtroom and lied under oath to support a fabricated story. I could hold you in contempt for that, but I don't think I need to. You'll have to live with what you've done for the rest of your lives. I hope you'll reflect on that. She turned to Sarah. As for you, Ms. Martinez, you came into my courtroom and committed perjury. You lied under oath about physical abuse that never happened. You fabricated a story of domestic violence to gain sympathy and financial reward. That's not just unethical, it's criminal. I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution. Sarah's face went white. Perjury charges. That could mean jail time. And Mr. Kyle Mitchell, a judge said, as an attorney, you should know better than to take a case where you're personally involved without doing your due diligence. Your conduct in this case was frankly embarrassing to the legal profession. I'm recommending the Bar Association review your handling of this case. You may find yourself facing disciplinary action. She banged her gavel. Court dismissed. We left the courthouse. Frank shook my hand. Congrats, kid. That was one of the most satisfying cases I've ever worked. Total victory. They got destroyed. I should have felt victorious. Should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. I'd won, sure, but I'd lost my wife, my brother, my parents, and a good chunk of my faith in humanity in the process. That was 3 months ago. Sarah's been calling constantly, left dozens of voicemails. She's broke, living in a shitty apartment, working retail because she lost her marketing job when word of the lawsuit got out. Turns out companies don't like hiring people who commit perjury in court. She's begging me to forgive her, says it was all a mistake, says she was manipulated by Kyle, says she never loved him, only me. Her latest voicemail was particularly desperate. Please just call me back. I'm drowning here. The garnishment takes almost half my paycheck. I can barely afford food. My parents won't help me anymore. They're furious about the perjury thing. I have no one. I made a mistake, okay? I made a horrible mistake, but I'm paying for it. Haven't I paid enough? Please, I'm begging you. Can you just forgive the debt? We meant something to each other once. I deleted it, then blocked her new number. She keeps getting new numbers, keeps calling. I keep blocking. It's almost funny at this point. The woman who sued me for emotional distress is now causing her own emotional distress by not accepting reality. Kyle lost his sales job too. Apparently sleeping with your client's brother's wife is frowned upon in his company. Someone from the firm was at the trial, saw the whole thing. He was fired within a week. He's trying to rebuild his law practice, but good luck with that, after bungling a case this badly in public record. The Bar Association is investigating him. He might lose his license. Last I heard, he's working at a car dealership selling used cars for commission. The golden child reduced to hawking 10-year-old Hondas to people with bad credit. My parents finally reached out, sent a long email about how they see now that they wear us wrong, how they were manipulated by Sarah's convincing story, how they should have known better than to doubt their own son, how they hope we can rebuild our relationship and move past this unfortunate situation. They want to rug sweep, pretend it never happened, go back to being a happy family. I haven't responded, not to any of them.